Obviously, this is such a different year, such a different day for you guys. How do you feel like you've balanced everything so far today? And I guess, did you guys make it through practice with this weather?
Yeah, so I obviously, very different. We typically staff meet at 7 a.m. So we had that staff meeting last night at 9 p.m. Is when I think we did it, or 9:30. Then we typically would do our special teams meeting in the morning after the staff meeting. So we'd end up doing that last night at like 9:45, special teams meeting. And then we still had to get all our practice scripts and all those things done. So it was a late night from that perspective. And then the coaches kept doing that in the morning, and myself and the coaches and the recruiting staff rotated in and out to handle recruiting, because we wanted to make sure that we did everything we possibly could to celebrate these signees who obviously didn't have a normal senior year, didn't have a normal recruiting process, no official visits. So we tried to balance all those types of things. And then what magnified it even more was we usually practice in the afternoon around 3 o'clock. And obviously with the weather, we moved it up, to 12 o'clock. So it just changed our normal dynamics. But again, this is what we had to do. Obviously in this part of the country, the snow creates another challenge. The weather can create another challenge. But I thought overall, we handled it pretty well. So I was pleased with how the staff stayed flexible and the players stayed flexible, and we adjusted. So we'll go from there. But overall, I was pleased in a very non-traditional year.
Mark Brennan and Rich Scarcella, you're on deck.
James, can you just talk about your general thoughts about the class and maybe kind of the balance that maybe there were some prospects they didn't quite get, but at the end of the day, you didn't lose anybody when you had kind of a rough start to the season as well?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I've been proud of, since we've been here and really kind of throughout my career, we've had very little drama on signing day, how we go about the process. The guys that are supposed to sign have typically signed. We usually have them all in by 7:30 in the morning. So that's been good. And I think that's based on, transparency and really good conversations with the families and our coaching staff. And a lot of them have been committed to us for a long time. We also went to some maybe non-traditional places for us to get some guys, to find some guys, which I thought that went well. We had a number of guys that committed to us without ever seeing the place. And again, like we've talked about before, this is a place where, you really have to have a specific plan to come see, because it's not really on the way to anything. So it's got to be a very, very specific plan. And typically spring games are huge for us from a recruiting perspective. Whiteout games are huge for us in a recruiting perspective. And obviously, this year, not having either of those factored in.
Rich Scarcella and Ryan Snyder, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Rich.
A few weeks ago, you had said to us that you were not satisfied with the recruiting job that you guys have done in this cycle. And I was just wondering, what have you learned from this cycle, especially when it comes to Pennsylvania?
Well, I think a lot of the things that we already talked about, I think, but the other thing we've talked about is that if you study Pennsylvania over the last, 30 years, the numbers, continue to decrease. We have not offered a large number of players in the state of Pennsylvania over the last 5 or 6 years. The number continues to go down. So that makes the guys that we do offer critical that we get. And when you don't get them, it magnifies it. There's no doubt about it. But when you have a state and the numbers, the population in the state of Pennsylvania, and the number of high school graduates and the number of Division I players, I know Terry Smith has showed me some very specific articles and studies that have been done in Western Pennsylvania as well, specifically to the WPIL. So We've always taken an approach, I think, as you guys know, of really the region, really, trying to do a good job in the region. But again, those things are magnified in years when you can't really get kids on campus. So the further that the kids have to go, or the fact that guys haven't been on campus, can create some challenges in years like this. But I felt like the staff did a really good job of being flexible and creative and going to some places, again, that we hadn't typically gone to, like going to a place like Alabama and getting a guy late in the process that had never seen the place that we think very, very highly of. Those things are important. We were able to be very successful in Michigan this year. That helped us as well. So again, at the end of the day, I'm pleased with how it played out, but we also still have the second signing day to go with. So there's still some prospects that we're involved with. And then I think the other thing that you guys will see is we have typically signed a full class to try to get to our 85, where a lot of programs have saved scholarships for the transfer market. And we're also going to be involved in that. So, when you talk about, transfers, we're going to be looking at defensive ends. We're going to be looking at defensive backs, from a transfer perspective, or in the second recruiting cycle. Those are areas that we're going to be focused on. So any high school coaches or prospects that may be listening to this, those positions, as well as maybe some others, are going to be very, very important for us moving forward. So you'll see some more activity, in the second recruiting period, as well as the transfer market, which is just really, part of 2020 and where football is at and where football is headed.
Ryan Snyder, and then Ben Jones, you're on deck.
James, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
You too.
You guys signed 3 really good receivers who are all getting a lot of credit, especially over the last couple months. Lonnie, Liam, Trey. Just talk about what you see from them moving forward, especially Trey. You guys kind of signed him late. I think a lot of fans want to learn more about him.
Yeah, Trey's a guy. One of the things that really got us excited about him is if you watch his basketball tape and his dunks. Him and Lonnie could have a dunk contest against each other, which would be really, really exciting to watch. And to me, I've always felt like, wide receivers and DBs that can play basketball as well as football and do it at a high level, the body control, the ball skills, all those types of things. And then you magnify that with Lonnie, who also is a high level basketball player and can track the ball, as an outfielder. All those things, really, really translate. And when we got a chance to watch his tape, as well as talk to a lot of people out there that had seen him live, a lot of the testing information for us, probably more so than a lot of places, we're a big testing numbers program. So being able to get guys in camp, whether they're underclassmen or seniors, and be able to get true testing numbers, what their 40 is, what their vertical jump is, and then get a chance to coach them and work with them, we think is really important. It allows us to get a little bit more information and be very comfortable with some decisions that we make. So when we can't get them ourselves, we have to try to get them from people that we trust and people that we think are giving us accurate information. So he's a guy that we identified late. A lot of people that we talked about were very impressed with him. And as we got to know him and his family, that went really good. Obviously, Liam, we've known forever. He's been to camp here since he was in like 5th, 6th grade, I think. Obviously, we got a strong relationship with the family. I'm really proud of the fact how many guys that we have had that their parents felt so good about the experience that they've had that they've sent the younger brother. I think that is telling. We've had a number of those, and even we've had brothers whose little sisters has come. Trace McSorley, I think is an example of that. And I think that speaks about Penn State and also our program. We've also had the other end of the spectrum where we don't offer a younger brother, and then that hurts us getting the younger brother. We don't offer the older brother, and then that hurts us with getting the younger brother. That's played out that way as well. So, but the class of wide receivers we really like. They all got good size. They're all 6'1" or taller, and and are put together already. So we're excited about those three, and I know Coach Cooper in our baseball program is excited too.
Ben Jones, and then John Petishnock, you're on deck.
James, a little bit away from recruiting, I just want to go back to that fake punt thing, whatever exactly that was that you guys called last week. What was the genesis behind that? Because you guys have not really been called those sorts of things traditionally. How did that come to pass?
Yeah, so typically we work those things every week all year. So we have a number of plays, and we always tell the guys, you never know when the situation is going to come where we're going to run it. And we feel like the risk is worth the reward, or we feel like there's an advantage. So right there in that situation, if you obviously there's a bunch of things we could have done. We could have gone for it on fourth down. But then you risk, if you don't pick it up, giving them the ball. You could run a fake, which is another scenario. Or you can try to get them to jump off sides. And the way that play works, you're really okay with it either way. They could have called that on us or them very easily. But at the end of the day, if they call it on us, it's a 5-yard penalty and you punt it. It's not the end of the world. So in that situation, the risk is worth the reward. So we have been working that, Ben, I guess to your point, we've worked it for 7 years, because every Friday we go through those situations, and there's times where it makes sense. And we felt like it made sense right there. And everybody was kind of excited. But those were the things that we were talking about, kind of on the headset. And that happens probably more on special teams than offense or defense, because as a head coach, you have to be careful. If the defense calls something, it's hard to say no, and get them to get a new defensive call and get it in on time before the offense snaps the ball. And the same thing on offense, where on special teams, we're usually talking about these things on third down. Joe usually either is talking to me on the headset or he comes and stands right next to me, and we're having these discussions. So, Ben, literally we got a bunch of stuff that we work. We've been working every week for 7 years, and sometimes they come out and they're ready to go, and sometimes they're not. So for us to call it that situation and it worked and it went well, great. I think you described it as whatever you call that thing. But we also know in that very specific play, I know that their coaches turned it in and complained about us. And to be honest with you, I agree. That's one of those, they could call it either way. They could call it either way. I don't know if you guys remember, we actually did something similar in the Rose Bowl game. We had on the punt return, we were stemming the front to try to get them to jump off sides. We did it a couple times, and we got warned by the officials to stop. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it's literally the opposite of what we did.
John Petishnock, and then Joe Giuliano, you're on deck.
Hey, good afternoon, James. Appreciate your time today.
You too, John.
Hey, the team featured some videos of alumni on social media today from Keegan-Michael Key and Lara Spencer, among others, welcoming the recruits to Penn State. Wanted to ask, what's the impact of the Penn State Alumni Network in recruiting? And on a more personal level, what does it mean to you when notable alumni like Keegan and Lara make time for the football program and welcome the recruits to Penn State?
Yeah, that's something that we sell a lot. We talk about, our alumni base, the power of our alumni base, not only in numbers, but in the power of the individuals as well. As you guys know, we've developed a really good relationship with Keegan. I called him for a couple things this week, and I know how busy he is, so I try to be careful doing that. I actually went, it may have been last year or 2 years ago, I went to Keegan's birthday party in New York. He's been very supportive of us. We try to be very supportive of him as well. He's been fantastic. I don't know Lara Spencer as well. I wish I did, but Chris Peterson has a relationship, so she reached out. Having Dion back, Dion reached out to Donovan, a bunch of those guys, and got them involved. I know it was really special for some of our Michigan guys to have Allen Robinson and to have KJ Hamler. There's a lot of resources here, and you got to be willing to take advantage of them. And again, on a year like today, where these guys were missing out on so many of their normal traditional recruiting experiences. We're trying to be creative and think outside the box and have some fun with it. So, I thought it went well, and I was happy to see the parents' faces light up, and the prospects or the commitments or the signees now, and their faces light up, as we went through the process and tried to make it as special as we possibly could. Again, under unusual circumstances.
There's time for 2 more questions. Joe Giuliano, and then Nubias Wilborn.
Good afternoon, James. Thanks for your time.
You too, Joe.
I have another Lonnie White question. You've had experiences in the past in your head coaching career where athletes wanted to play football and baseball at the same time. What kind of a balance does that take? And why do you think Lonnie can achieve success in both sports?
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to come to Penn State and be a traditional student. It's challenging. And then it's challenging to be a student and play major Division I football. And then to balance that with going and playing baseball is even more challenging, because not only does it affect you academically, but now you really don't have an off season. You don't have an off season for rest and recovery, but you don't also have an off season for development in one sport. So if you're playing football, you can say, okay, I'm going to take the off season. I'm going to work on these areas of weakness. And when you're playing another sport, that makes it really challenging. I think I called him our version of Bo Jackson or Deion Sanders. Hopefully we don't get in a situation where he plays a football game, jumps on a flight, and then plays a baseball game later in the same day. But it's challenging. From the very beginning, we talked about it. We talked about at one point he was leaning towards just playing football. And then what happens is he goes and plays baseball, and he has success in baseball. And as you guys have seen, he's very well thought of and highly thought of. So then it, kind of switched back. But at the end of the day, I said, listen, I'm going to support you in whatever you want to do, and your family as well. But we're going to talk about this. This is hard to do. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands what we're gonna accomplish and how we're going to accomplish it together. And it's not going to be easy. And Coach Cooper was involved in the process as well. He was on the call with Lonnie this morning and his family. So that's been really good. But we're excited about getting him. And I think he's one of these guys, when he plays baseball, he thinks baseball is his deal. When he's playing football, it's football is his deal. It just kind of depends on the timing of it. And for me, we've had a little bit of it, not a lot of it. Because it's hard to do.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for the time on this busy day. Thank you, man. A little bit towards the Illinois game. Have you ever had a player and his sister was on the opposite sideline on the opposite coaching staff? And what would that be like this week for Mr. Washington?
No, but I think we've had siblings. We've had siblings. We actually had a sibling this year, in an earlier game. So it happens, whether it's a dad who's a coach, of a guy, on another team, or whether it's a recruiting staff member or a brother playing for another school, or something like that. So, but no, we got to know, his family very well, mom, dad, and sister. We knew that she wanted to get into the business. The challenge now with the NCAA rules is it's really hard to hire people, based on the IAWP rules, individual associated with the prospect. It makes it really challenging. But yeah, we're very aware of his sister being in Illinois. I told Parker there'll be no conversations this week. Do not call her in pregame. I don't expect to see you hugging her either after the game. You do whatever you want. But this week we were able to call AT&T here in town and have her number blocked from his phone. So hopefully after the game they'll get to spend some time together. But we love Ashton. We love mom and dad. And obviously Parker's has had a phenomenal true freshman year for us. And we expect that to continue to build.